Welcome to the Press Play and Run podcast, the podcast that loves runners nearly as much as Philip Schofield. Shh, Alison, I've not even introduced you yet. On episode 14, I'm joined by regular guest and soon to become co-host for the day, Alison Jardine. Some of you will know from episode 1 and probably another 2 or 3 episodes that she's been on. And we're having an Edinburgh Marathon post-mortem. We're going to talk through the week leading up. We are going to take some questions that people have left on our social handles, and Alison is going to take a gleeful opportunity to put me in the interviewee chair for a change. So I am not steering this episode. I'm delighted to say that I'm handing over the reins to Alison. First, before we get to that, Alison, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. Looking forward to this. You've had me in the hot seat twice, so it's definitely my turn now.
Is it not 3? Not adjourned 3 times?
Yeah, actually, if we count the other the quick one that turned into about half an hour.
Alison's agent is demanding royalties from the show, so she's welcome to the 0% of the zero that we earn. So that's wonderful. You're not missing out on very much. Before I let you take control of this episode and hold my feet to the fire with these questions, I want to just quickly ask you your first experience, certainly in a long time, but I know maybe ever, of looking at a marathon through the other lens. You were there supporting for the day. You met so many people. Give me the Cliff Notes version. How was it for you?
Amazing. I did not know that you could get like a supporter's high from watching runners, and it felt as good as a runner's high. Obviously, we're lucky enough to see you and so many other people from Instagram, friends, and it was such a laugh as well. The signs that we made, I know they've been mentioned quite a few times. That kind of just made it even better. We got a lot of laughs off of all the runners at the first point. People did not find those signs that funny after 22 miles, as you know. But no, I it was just totally different, and I'll be back to watch again. I loved it.
Reading a sign saying basically don't shit yourself at 14 miles is hilarious. Reading it at 22, it makes you want to go and attack the person. Did you get a bit of a sense of maybe what the likes of Sandy, your husband, and maybe other people that have supported you in the past go through in order to make it happen? Because it was quite a logistical task. I know my wife was with you and you were babysitting her as well, so that was great.
Yeah, I think I hadn't really understood how it would be. When you're running, you just start when the gun goes and you run and run and run. And the biggest thing in your head is you need to remember where they're standing so you'll see them. But trying to be like, all right, hold on, right, where are you on the map? Where's the dot moving? How long have we got? Right, what did you want here? Was it water, juice, sweets? And then it was quite interesting. We were fortunate in the fact that when we were watching, we'd chosen a point that we just had to move across the grass. So that was quite easy. But I know, for example, at London, it's more logistically difficult because you're getting on and off undergrounds. I think the part we found the hardest, and I was a bit disappointed, was it took us so long to get to you at the end. And I know that's just because we obviously chose to stand in Port Seaton, had to get in a car. There was an accident, which then meant that I think it took us about an hour and a half to get you, by which point you were obviously lying on the grass.
Dead.
But yeah, it was interesting, and it did. And I thought we'll probably talk about it more when we start speaking about you, but it's kind of knowing what you're going through as well. Like I knew at the point of 14, people were still like, "Ooh, this is great." And I knew at 22, when I saw people's faces, I was like, yeah, I know what you're feeling right now.
Living your best life at 14 and living somebody else's worst life at 22.
Yeah.
No, for sure. I think it was... you were buzzing off the back of that experience, and actually everybody I know that was supporting, and I need to give a shout out there to all the support on the course and the Newton Road runners, and there's such a big crowd, the Loch Ness 24 crew, yourselves, like so many faces along the way, but everybody was buzzing off the spectating, and I've had that before. I have done that part, so it was great. The support on the course was fantastic. So I had thought for a few days, really, I've been stewing on what do I do with this episode of the podcast, because it was always going to be this episode and then one more to finish the series. But the thought of sitting talking into the mic for 50 minutes on my own, reflecting on it, it didn't fill me with much in the way of inspiration. I thought about getting other people on, but too many, I wouldn't have been able to dig into their story. And I think that's what I enjoy the most, so I didn't want to make that superficial. But I've definitely met people via that marathon who I want to have on in season 2 for sure. Had some great chats with people. But this is what we settled on, mostly because you partly made me, but also it was in my head anyway to get somebody on to speak to me about my experience if that's what people want. And I think the response that we've had on the socials means it's probably the right thing to do because so many questions came in. So see, at this point, Alison, I'm just going to hand the reins over to you and let you steer the same kind of chat we would normally have, but I'm going to try and shut my geggy, for want of a better Scottish term, and actually let you lead me through this. I'll see if I can let my OCD stop me taking control.
Well, being the good interviewer you are, you have already stolen the first question, which was when we first spoke about this. I think it was on that long run we did between Tokyo and London, and I suggested this. Your instant reaction was no, nobody cares about my journey. And my answer was, of course they do, because we've listened to everyone else's. What actually then did make you change your mind? Was it on the day when so many people were coming up and encouraging you, or after?
Yeah, no, I don't think it was on the day. I don't think people don't care about my journey. I know how many supportive people I have, and the support I had in the run up to the marathon. I think since we spoke, obviously the podcast has grown exponentially. Probably my social handles and following on there has grown exponentially too. So we're at a different time and place probably with the interest in my own running. But I've also quite carefully, I hope, crafted a podcast where my running's not the centre of the attention. I've tried to keep it that way because I'm more interested in hearing the story of other people. But I think what swung it for me was the number of messages I had from either first-time marathoners or people now on the cusp of. And really the only person that can give that perspective that they're looking for is a first-time marathoner. And rather than me trying to tease that out of somebody I maybe don't potentially know that well, I've got the answers that mean something to me. And I've spoke to you about your experience. I've got a lot from it. I just thought I'd flip it and see how it works. I will not be making a habit of it.
Brilliant. Well, no, we're glad you're here, obviously, because I know that there are so many people, and like you say, there's been a lot of people actually asked about because it was your first time, and I know they're really interested in that as well. So if you first want to take us back, I know you would always do a little bit on your own podcast, but I think when a lot of us would have last heard you was when you were the guest on the Point 99 podcast, and I think that went out the week before. So
yeah,
if you start off with like an overview of that final week, few days leading up to the big day.
Yeah, so we recorded that I think maybe about 9 days out, and it aired just a few days before the marathon. I think I'd said on that podcast, and I know some of our listeners listen to that and some don't. I had been in a very good headspace leading into taper, but come taper time, I was completely satisfied with the work that I'd done. I had 94, 95 runs in my training block without missing a session. So I was very comfortable and confident that the work that I could do, I'd done what I could control, I'd controlled. But I had a really busy week in the lead up, a really busy weekend. I think I'd mentioned I did like the Celtic game with the trophy. I had my brother's 40th as well that weekend, and I had family here. So I didn't have time, probably in the way that a lot of people do, to just sit and stew. I didn't have much time to think about running. I was actually grateful for the taper because I wasn't trying to squeeze in lots of running in and around it. What I would say is on the down times, it wasn't doubt creeping in. It was some of that, the uncontrollables, the weather, the logistics, that was starting to grate on my nerves a wee bit. I had an issue with my accommodation that I got fixed. But I went in to the day. See, when I arrived in Edinburgh, I went with my friend Michael, who ran the half marathon, his first ever race, and he did amazingly well. As soon as we checked into that hotel, the stress of all that dropped because I knew how close we were to start. I was ready to go. I was relaxed. It was a long day leading up to it, but I was in as good a headspace as I could be. So I didn't get the paranoia. I'd love to tell everybody I did, but I didn't. It wasn't a feature of my run up. I didn't feel like that.
Yeah, no, and it is interesting because we obviously met at a park run. I think there was a few of us. Some were running, some were supporting because they had Edinburgh the next day. And I do remember I was like, wow, you are as cool as a cucumber. I don't think I have seen anybody as relaxed the day before a marathon as you were. So it's good to know that it continued once you arrived, because I do know that I think the biggest issue, like you said, for you was the accommodation. And I think Edinburgh for me, when I've looked at it, is not the easiest to get to, which is a bit ridiculous as it's the capital, but at least you manage to get that fixed because it is those little things that can end up causing more of a stress in the actual run, and you don't want that when you've looked forward to something for so long, do you?
So even on the day of going through, Alison, it took me the best part of it was over 2 hours on the train to get there, which is meant to be like an hour and 16 minute journey. But the Harry Styles gig was on.
So it was.
So the train stopped every station for ages, people piling on. I'm not sure what was going on down the carriage, but it was certainly there was a party atmosphere on the train. So it took ages, and I had arranged to meet with some of the Loch Ness 24 crew that I'll be running with in that relay marathon for dinner. And that was at 7 o'clock. We weren't even checked into the hotel by then, so I ended up having to change those plans a wee bit. And so there was a stress in and around that bit. But as I said, see, when I got checked in and I made my peace with the fact we're just going to eat here at the hotel, and the hotel staff were really, really nice, and that bled away as well. It was just a couple of hours I could have been doing without. I'm really glad I went through the night before though, because that morning of journey, if that had have happened on the morning,
Yeah, that can change
yeah,
everything.
I wouldn't have been in as good a place. I was able to concentrate on hydrating the night before. I ate very well in the morning. Everything that I had to happen, bodily functions happened, and but I had the time in the privacy of your own room to do all of that.
Mm-hmm. So that leads us on nicely then to the morning of. So you've made it to Edinburgh in a hotel room, with you've had your dinner, not quite as planned, but you know what? That's actually a good point because I can't think of a time that everything goes to plan for a marathon. So, like you say, it happens, you get over it, and you just make the best of the situation. So you're now standing outside the hotel, or you're packing your stuff ready to go. So take us through the whole day and how it went, feelings.
Yeah, a really early start because Michael, who I can't call Michael anymore because his name's Sonic to me, so I'm just going to call him Sonic.
Just go for it.
He had a very early start. That was an 8 a.m. start for that race. He doesn't eat in the morning particularly, but I was trying to encourage him eat something it's hot. It was already hot by that point in the morning, not as hot as it got later, but it was already a warm start to the morning. So I was up from around, I think around 6ish, pottered about. I didn't eat until 7. I was just trying to keep that as consistent with my long run routine as I could. And I ate the same things that I would have eaten on every long run. So all the advice about don't do anything new and stuck with that. So it was porridge, it was bagel, peanut butter. It was those types of sort of high energy food, banana, closer to the time, drink as much as I could at that point. So that was that part of the morning. That's a bit where I think the nerves can creep in a wee bit because you're eating and then waiting.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be in the house feeling like I was normally waiting because I'd be doing whatever I need to do with the kids.
Uh-huh.
But I was sitting in a hotel room just staring at the wall going, what now?
Well, and did you change? I know you said that you just did everything that you would normally do before every long run, but did you adapt anything because of you knew that it was going to be hot on the day?
I'd already started really up in the water. I had started up in the hydration anyway. So I was taking a hydration tablet and like a sport and science SIS tablet every day from about the Tuesday or Wednesday anyway, along with upping my fluids through the week. As I saw the temperature coming up again, I took in as much as I could, but there is a limit to it. Like I was starting to feel heavy and I didn't want to be standing in the line feeling heavy and sluggish. So I was trying to just get that blend right. But I took water with me on my walk I was about a 10-15 minute walk to Bag Drop, and I took some water with me there as well. And I kept sipping away almost up until the start line, and I bumped in, and I don't know if we're at that bit yet, but as I left the hotel, I walked up, I saw loads of other runners. I was chatting with a couple of people on the way up. Again, I could tell you I was nervous. I was really relaxed. I was in good spirits. I knew I was going to be bumping into Bob Burrow, who we'd had on the show, Jace, the Edinburgh runner as well. A couple of people I'd been in touch with. So I had a purpose. I was going somewhere, and that was a plan. And I walked up and met them.
I always think that's quite nice actually, because I think that was one of the reasons that I really struggled at London this year because I didn't have that. But I've been very fortunate in the last few marathons I've done that I've had that as well, where you're either going with someone or you know you're going to meet someone or you just bump into people. And it just then you almost forget for a second what you're there for because you're just so busy catching up and talking about running.
Yes, yeah, I met Steve from the Point 99 podcast as well. Mr.
Oh,
Steve Runs. That wasn't as planned. He just sort of walked down and I recognised him, although he's about 4'2" taller than I thought he was.
yeah.
Um, but I was looking, I keep raving to you about that Steve Magnus account on
Yeah.
Instagram, and the leadership and the like how your mind works stuff. And there was a post just yesterday about the impact that laughing and joking has on performance in terms of setting you up for high performance. See that lets me stay in the mode that I'm most comfortable, meeting
Hmm.
people, chatting, winding each other up, like not standing stewing because I've done all that in the past. So I
Yeah.
think that's why it was other people that helped keep me as relaxed as I did.
I do think that's quite an important thing for maybe people listening to take away because, well, we've now both said it, but I honestly firmly believe that it does. It really helps relax you because you're not standing there on your own. And I know you touched on it. I think it was at the Monklands half marathon, how a few people you'd seen were doing that. And you're like, come on, just be part of the group.
Yeah,
It's more fun to
yeah.
stand and have a laugh rather than be the Portaloos or whatever it is. You panic
It,
at the last
it
minute.
was me 6 months ago. It was me a year ago. It was me 2 years ago. Get your race number at 8 and sit in the car winding yourself up till half
Yep.
9 until the start. Like what? Nothing good's coming from it. It's just all internalized thoughts.
And it is overthinking nerves, and you're not at your best when you're uptight and anxious. So
No.
and so we're almost at the start line, but was there any last minute dashes to the toilet or anything like that? Or were you okay?
Toilet cubicles were, as you can imagine,
Oh
it,
yeah, we've
it,
all can
it was
imagine.
like a UN food drop, that queue. So I was feeling okay. I did feel like I needed the toilet just to pee and like, but I was thinking that queue, I wasn't even confident that queue would be down in time for me
Hmm.
to go. But then somebody had said, I think you call it Teviot or Teviot House, which was just around the corner, and I think last minute number replacement pickup was there. They had downstairs bathrooms there, and there was literally no queue for the guys,
Oh,
and a very
amazing.
short queue for the girls. So, seeing that word started to filter around, I've just nipped over there. It was like 2 or 3 minutes away. Went to the bathroom. Was able to. I met some of the Newton marathon runners on my club mates by accident on the
Hmm.
way there. Got a picture with them and stuff like that, and it pointed them the same. So again, that stress came away. Bag drop was seamless. It was the start was very well organised, and then I went to the start area nice and early, and that bit got a wee bit stressful. That got pretty packed pretty quickly for the size of space that was there for the pen. And looking around me, I don't think there was much happening in terms of people staying in the right pen. It was predominantly my colour, but there was people from all over the place.
Okay.
And in hindsight, I wish I'd got myself probably up into the red pen. It was just because the predicted time I put in.
And that's the thing as well. I mean, I didn't know that about Edinburgh. I know, for example, some of the other ones are so strict. There's absolutely no way you're changing unless you're moving back the way. But that's interesting to know as well because, well, and I'm sure you're going to cover this, but when you get started, it soon becomes obvious who should and shouldn't be in that
Yeah.
pen. So gun goes.
Yeah.
What's the first thought that goes into your head? Time to do this?
Gun goes, they start walking you forward to the start. So you're seeing just up ahead people going, but it must have taken another 6 or 7 minutes to walk to the start from the start of the pen.
Okay.
It was almost like mini waves within the wave setting off. Um,
Yeah.
maybe not set, maybe just felt like 6 or 7 minutes. It
Uh,
felt like ages because it was like your watches.
you're waiting to
you've got
check.
your watch ready to go. You've got GPS, and you don't want to get into standby mode. So like all that, but that felt like it lasted an eternity. Then you start out in that course, brilliant support on the start line, super loud, really, really loud. I forgot to look up because Gina that I had in the podcast was I think was at the starting bit on the race
Oh,
plinth, and I was too bloody locked in to even look up. It was her video later I recognised where she was. But we started and it was very congested. The first 2 miles, probably nearly three.
okay.
And it wasn't, you're saying it's easy to know who should be there and what, it was actually hard to know who should be where because it was so congested that I don't know who was holding who up or if it was just felt like a bit too many at points. So the road narrows and widens quite a lot over that first 2K. And once I pushed through and I passed Bob and he shouted at me, he shouted, "Here's the elites coming." Actually, once I passed him, he would probably have a better recollection of when that was, maybe about a K and a half in, and he'd started slightly up ahead of me. Then it opened out a wee bit,
Mhm.
and I felt okay. I got moving, but I spent a fair bit of time up in the grass and the pavement for the
Yeah.
first 2 or 3K.
I can't remember if I ever mentioned to you. I've said to a few people about marathons because I think that unless you're going to run a really remote one, you're going to have that. It's always the first 2, 3 miles until you get your space. But I always do try and pick a side, never go in the middle, so you can do the whole jump on the pavement, up on the grass, just to get a bit of space and move forward.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
but
there was a lot of road furniture, so that you couldn't actually. There was like an island down the middle at some parts, and there was poles and there was barriers, and so you were sort of just steered along. I was a wee bit like a lemming at times, and sometimes I just had to sit in behind and take my medicine, go at the pace. But actually, looking at my splits, I was relatively bang on with where I
you
wanted
were.
to be.
And I don't know what your thoughts on this are, but sometimes as frustrating as it can be, because I know at the start of any race, it doesn't have to be a marathon, you're like, come on, right, let's go, let's go. I get annoyed, but then I think it's good because it stops you doing that because you're not able to like rush like as you
Yeah,
maybe would at part on the first mile. So maybe, although it's frustrating, there's a bit of a blessing there.
yeah. Well, it does stop you flying out. I mean, it does
Hmm.
limit the pace you can run at. On the flip side of that, I think unless you're quite calm about it, it could spike your heart rate trying to, it's regulating. Like, it's fine to be going at that pace, but if you're getting stressed, like it took me a 3K to settle in. Even though my pace was already where it had to be, I didn't feel settled until I had a bit of open road.
So I obviously have never ran Edinburgh. I've seen pictures, I saw some videos, and it looked amazing at the start. So I understand obviously you start in the city, but then where? So you say you got your kind of space at about 3, 4 miles. Where does it go after that? You start going out towards Musselburgh, is that right?
You're asking the wrong person. My geographical sense is horrific. It takes you in quite city centre to start with, and it turns you down out towards Musselburgh. But on your right, you've got the big raised. Remember, we drove in and we saw like it
Yes.
looks like a cliff face basically. That was an out and back section, quite narrow. See, as soon as we passed through there, then it puts you onto. You go through a roundabout and it put you onto the coastline. So that would be heading in towards that Musselburgh type, right down the coast. That's where it really opened out, and that's where
Yeah.
I felt like my race probably started.
Started, uh-huh. So you're kind of in your like into that now, your normal pace. You can breathe. The nerves have gone. Well, there weren't nerves, but you just the heart rate's normal. You're just finding your flow. So that would be what about almost 10K, just before 10K.
Four, five, yeah, about maybe about 6, 7K. I felt like I was really settled into my rhythm at that point, and I was consistently hitting just 1 or 2 seconds above or below my pace each time, and I wasn't overly clock watching either. I just got into the rhythm pretty early, so that was good, and I sustained that through practically through the first half of the race. A couple of wee bits where I sped up. I think what I did, something I learned was when the crowds are big and they're loud, your internal clock speeds up. And, I was seeing 10 seconds coming off a K and going, oh, right, okay, calm down.
And again.
And then on a really quiet bit, you can slip those 10 seconds back without
Mhm.
realising that you've slowed down.
It's good to have a wee bit either way, isn't it?
Yeah,
Just and out of interest, how did you split the marathon down? So, I know like some people will do 5 mile blocks, some will do 10K chunks. How did you decide to break it down in your head?
4 10Ks and an extra wee bit. That was what was in my head. So I had written down my splits. Just I was conscious of not being overly reliant on GPS in case it didn't work in the day. So I knew where I had to be at 10K, 20K, 30K, 40K, and then obviously the end if I wanted to hit that time I was setting out at, which for full transparency, I'd set out 3:16, three
Hmm.
hours 16 minute finish. So I'd set out at a pace of I can't remember what it was exactly now. Let's say it was I think 4:29 or whatever.
And
Um,
I'll look that up and put what is in miles for the one.
7:29. I'm pretty sure it was.
It was, yeah.
So I had those 10 mark gauge points. Hindsight, did it work? I don't know. I struggled with the mile markers a lot. Don't think I saw 5 mile markers that whole race. I really
And
struggled to locate them.
that's interesting because I know we joke about this all the time because you work in K and I work in miles. So when we talk about going for a run, it takes about half an hour to work out what pace we're going to go. So you're saying that at Edinburgh, then it was K markers?
No, it was
No,
mile markers.
mile markers, right? So would you then, if you were to go and do another marathon, where you can usually find out what it's going to be on the course if it's going to be K or miles. Do you think you would change how you do it so that you would do it in miles, for example, rather than K?
Yeah, 100%. I found myself particularly, this was more telling at the end when I really get tired, and I won't go into that bit yet, but when your mind starts to mangle reality and you're trying to do maths, that's not the one when you're later into the race. So I think in hindsight, I would have set my watch to miles, because I was regularly thinking, what mile am I in here? Because I knew where you were standing and where Nicola was, but I was trying to do the maths of what K is that in and
Right.
what. And I already knew this, by the way, before we started. But see, when I get tired, really tired, my head was gone at times trying to do those maths. So I think for sure, even if I trained in K that whole time, I would be changing my watch into miles and actually trusting my pace more. My watch didn't dictate my pace at any time. The feel did. I knew where I was.
Yeah.
And actually, your watch can't make you run faster or slower. It just stresses you to an extent.
Well, exactly. We've spoken about that before as well. So no, I think feel's always the best way when you can. So we're at 10K. You know your next marker is going to be 20K, and you're going to come up to Nicola and myself, Emily. What's in your head at that point?
What was in my head at that point was I knew how consistent I was being. It was my splits in that portion were the most consistent out the whole race. So 10 to 20k, I was absolutely cruising with my pace, but the heat started to get up from about 15k. The sun came out, so it's not like it probably didn't get dramatically warmer if you were watching, if you're standing at the side, but that direct sunlight hitting you, the warmth of the sun at that point really started to play a part. So I'm getting to 21k. I got to the halfway point and I remember thinking I was 8 seconds up on my pace. Couldn't ask for more than that. But I just knew that it felt like I was working at that point too hard to sustain that pace. Now, that's a weird thing because I was trying to explain that to you probably in a state of tiredness afterwards. It wasn't my legs. It wasn't my lungs. I could only describe it as feeling like the battery was being drained. Like I saw Running with Stephen's account, the guy who's got the YouTube account. He described it as basically like you've spent too much time on feet, and that's probably not a bad summary of it. It was like this is going to be unsustainable over that time. So that's where I was. It was a very weird thing because I was like, this is going really well, the pace.
But you knew.
Now I don't know if psychologically at that point I started dropping my pace, or if my pace started dropping and I noticed it. I couldn't tell you the order of it, but I just knew 316 is not in play today. As early as that, I knew that.
And I guess then so you've always been open, and you've said what the A goal was, and I know there was a B and a C as well. I think it does take a very sensible and brave person to make when you make that decision. We've all, those of us, and it's maybe not even just in a marathon, but we've all had to make that decision to step back. What went through your head at the point you did make that decision? Was it disappointment, or what did you feel?
So, for transparency, for anybody who's only listening to this episode and hasn't heard previously, my A goal was sub 320, which would have been good for age for Chicago. And I'd said at the time, big ask, everything has to go right for that to happen. That's the top end. The B goal was sub 330. And the C goal was to finish in one piece and enjoy it. So if it was all going south, not to DNF, not to hate it to the point where I would never consider another one. At the point I've made that decision, like I'm saying, I couldn't tell you if it was just hindsight or not. Did that make the decision? Did the pace make the decision? Did I make the decision about the pace? Still don't really know how. I was a wee bit gutted probably for 1 or 2k because I still felt really strong at that point, and I thought I could just keep pushing. So that was the battle maybe for 2k at that point was, you've made this decision, but you're still fresh enough to hold this pace. And I could have definitely for another 10k, but I know it would have happened
after that.
And that was the angel and the devil on the shoulder saying, you could hold this, it's mind games, you're talking to yourself. And then the other bit of me saying, I felt at that point if I didn't stop, I either had the A goal in me or risking the C goal, not getting the C goal. So it was basically in that, do I go shit or bust here? Do I go for the sub 320 or don't finish this or end up in a medical tent, or the Beagle's there for a reason? So from that point, see, when I made my peace with that, Alison, that probably took 2 kilometres, 3 kilometres. When I made my peace with it, then it was a bit of maths to say, what can I afford to drop to manage this situation? And I still felt good at that point, right up to 30k. I was making very good logical decisions. I was slowing when I had to. I was picking up a bit of time where the course allowed, where the crowds were. I was letting myself be taken. I was upping my water intake. I was doing all the things that you would hope you would do if you manage a situation well till 30k.
And I think that's such an important thing to speak about, because we've spoken about this so many times, about the disappointment, about having to change goals, about being sensible to finish. And I know, we spoke about it very briefly, like when you finished, but it's been interesting the amount of people since, and I'm sure you're the same, that have said exactly what you're saying. I had to change the goal. And my response has been, well, you did the most sensible thing you could have ever done, because I've seen it, and I know you sadly saw it on the day. There were people that didn't finish it
Yeah.
because, for various reasons, but I know that some people don't, because they don't change the goal and they keep pushing. And like you say, it was getting hotter and hotter. There's various factors there, but sometimes if you aren't the sensible person, like you say, you might not even get the C goal. So, I know you've kind of made peace with that, but yeah, I personally think that, you made the right decision at the right time as well,
Yeah.
not even on that cusp of, oh my God, I'm hating this. And
the side of the road was littered with people already by this point, walking. And this is you need to remember, I'm running at this point on 3:16 pace. This is people that are going out at a good pace. Yeah, I mean, you're not even holding that pace to begin with if you've not got something there. And already there's people starting to walk. And see, when I look at my splits, I'm saying I made that decision. The actual pace slowing down didn't happen until about 25k. So see, between 20 and 25, that's when I think I was probably still having the, well, I won't.
And that's interesting, because everyone's different. But I think that, like you say, when you see we're assuming experienced runners, because as you say, that it's highly unlikely they'd be at that kind of pace if they
fast
were.
runners, I would call them fast runners. Yeah.
At the side of the road already. It's in a race that when I see that, I'm like, right, hold on. What am I doing here? Am I okay? And you just have to do that little checklist in your head.
Yeah.
So that's you then. So you've made peace with what you're going to do. You're down at plan B, because through. So you kind of get to, in K, what that is, but at 40 miles, we're standing there. We give you a wave, cheer, and then you head off to the point that nobody apparently likes in this man.
Yeah, felt really good passing you guys, and I'd said I spotted Nicola like from quite a bit back, so it was quite nice because I was able to see you guys interacting with other runners before you saw me. I think I saw you first, and I was tucked in, and I felt strong running past you. I've seen the video since of me running past. I looked strong at that point. I didn't look like somebody that had had to make their peace with pace dropping, even though subconsciously I knew where I was. Then you pass through that crowd, because that's a really busy bit. That was the best bit of the course for support. That and the finish line I heard, but I don't really remember. But that bit of the course you were at was so loud. The charities were a wee bit further back, and from there on, it was just madness. Like, so loud. I had no music playing running past. I was just listening to everything. You get that wee pick me up. I sped up going through there again, because you just do. In case you were taking pictures, I wanted the flying feet, didn't
It
happen.
worked.
No, I don't know. No, I don't think it happened the way I was hoping. I never spotted a photographer before they spotted me the whole day. Then you go to the out and back section, and that was by a country mile the toughest part of the run. From what I've spoken to people since, for nearly everybody, you go out with the elites coming back, and you're running down, I think, for about, is it 4 miles? 4 miles down, 4 miles
Somebody
back.
said 4 miles, yeah.
I think it is. And you went round that country estate house, forget the name of it as well, into their grounds. So I'm running down, the elites are coming back. I spotted a couple of people I know. So Wizard Run Man, I can't remember. Rolf, I know his name's Rolf, I can't remember his handle. He was flying back. Then I saw Mark Gallagher, and I gave Mark a shout. He was kind of past me before I think it registered who it was, and he looked like he was either really focused or hating his life. But I'm hoping he just looked really focused because he was 4.5 miles ahead of where I was, so he shouldn't have been hating his life that much. But that was nice passing them. I had to stop for the toilet on that stretch as well, and this is where probably the beginning of, oof, right, this is going to take more than just management, because stopping even just for the 30 seconds to do the toilet and then starting again, I was like, oh my God, that felt dreadful, like so bad having to try and get back to the pace again. I felt like I was working harder and harder, and that road's a wee bit undulating out there.
I've heard that, yeah, it's not certainly not flat.
Nope. And then you get to the bottom and it's a traffic cone. And so literally a 180 turn. Oh my days. And then you go into this estate house and that's gravel. But see, at that point, Alison, you could be running in the woods yourself. Like, I don't even know if I had people, I don't think I saw anybody in there.
Really?
It was really quiet, and
It's quite odd, isn't it? Like
there's
for the sheer scale of the Edinburgh Marathon to get to a point where and it kind of then goes with how people describe that.
they were probably closer than I thought, but see, because there was nobody in the course at all at that point at the side, it felt desolate.
Just
Like, honestly, I felt, and everything at that point was hurting. That's when I started to home in on all the negatives, all the mind games. Your feet are sore, you're starting to cramp a wee bit, and this is people were going down with cramp left, right, and centre at that point. I'd given somebody a salt tablet and they'd cramp in both calves. We're only at this point probably 20 miles, 20
And
something miles.
do you feel, so I know you've spoken about in your own head, but when you see others starting to struggle, do you think that then starts playing games in your head too, like, oh no, right, that's someone down, is it me next? Oh, cramp, oh wait, I haven't felt that. Oh, do I feel something? Because these things
Yeah.
come into your head.
Is it watching really strong runners in front of you that I've been following and trying to hang on to their coattails, then suddenly stop in front of you? It's like, oh, now I'm here myself and I've got nobody in the next 200 yards ahead of me. Will I go and try and catch the next group, or will I stay and just run myself? And all of the mind games came into play at that point. We saw a couple of really unfortunate incidents, people in medical tent or with medical assistance, and some serious stuff as well. And all of that, no doubt, started to play a part on, for me, this needs to go beyond management. And I was really doing maths at this point, thinking, where can I get my rests at? I was trying to take salt tablets, so I'd had 4 in the day. I could feel cramp coming in my calf a bit. I was struggling to get the tablets down at this point at the water stations. I had taken water from every station. I didn't miss one just because of how hot it was.
Yeah.
And the volunteers were super good at making sure you had something on you. If you weren't spotting them, they were shouting you over. But I stopped at one to take a salt tablet and take a gel. So I must have stopped. Looking at my splits, I think I must have stopped for the best part of 40, 50 seconds.
Okay.
I knew I had the time,
Mm-hmm.
but I also went, right, go, and my legs didn't go. And they went, go, and my legs didn't go again. I'm like, you need to start running now.
You need to work now.
And in hindsight, that was a poor decision. I should have kept going and just kept trying to be consistent. So my pace started to spike and lag. And this was all in the last 10K when it was really hurting the most.
And I think it's important as well to highlight, though, at this point, the sun had really come out. I mean, I know
It was roasting.
By that point, it wasn't just like there was a few clouds. Like this point, it was like blaring. So I think definitely right decision. Stop at every state, or to take water on. Yeah, maybe not to actually stop for 50 seconds, but hey,
No.
you learn. So
I see that was at kilometre 39. That happened. So I mean, that was like that's a silly stop at that point. It's where I felt mentally like, and that's at the point where I'm thinking I might not finish this. That's when you start getting the dark thoughts.
And it is, in hindsight, it's a great thing, isn't it? And everything in life, not just running. But you at that point felt you needed to. So to me, that was still the right thing to do, because what if you hadn't? Would you have made it to then? So I think, it's great to look back, and maybe for next time, do you really need to stop? But then you did, because that was just the conditions and how you were feeling.
Jason caught up with me at that point when I just was taking the tablet or the gel, and he shouted, come on, and I'm trying to say to him, just go. This is almost like, this is not me chucked it. I'm just trying to get a breather. And I did catch back up with him, and who's to say if I kept running, you don't hit the cramp and you can't, who knows? Hindsight's always easy. But that last 10K, I don't know what the temperature got to in real terms. It felt like running on the sun for me. Like, I am not great with the heat anyway. Like, I'm not
Well,
particularly good in the sun, but the whole training block's right through the winter.
and that's a big factor too. We said that, didn't we? I think we'd always said you can't control uncontrollable.
No,
And I think that whole week you just saw you'd go into the weather forecast, it was going up and up and up. We've trained the whole way through winter for a spring marathon. We live in Scotland. There's not really much prep you can do to be ready, is there? For
we got lucky too because every other day around it was even hotter.
I know
Like
well
so, it was as relatively cool as any day that week.
week. Mm,
But still, for running, like if I'd have been out in the long run, I would have cut it short. No
yeah.
doubt, I would not have kept going because I know I'd have been working harder than I should have been or whatever. So big learning curve in that last 10k, but I was really pleased with again the management of it. And at no point did I let the target out my head. I was always measured enough to know that you can afford this, but only this, and then you need to go. And it worked in the end up because I got the time
That
of that
you
beagle. Yeah, yeah.
So we saw you at 22 miles. I'm not sure what that is in K. And it was definitely a very different person running towards us than it was when we saw you at 14. So what was going through your head at that point? Please don't speak to me, don't look at me.
You'll need to tell me because from not far before that to the end, my memory of the race is really, really patchy. Particularly the closer to the end, there's just big blank spots as to what happened. I felt out in my feet, and I think I actually said to you on the way by, "I'm fucked,"
You did.
and you screamed back at me, "No, you're not." And you had a bottle. You had a bottle for me with the one another one of the tabs in it. But see, at that point, I had taken on so much water that I was struggling to take on anymore. And I knew I was dehydrated and I needed it, but physically, I was struggling to keep it down. I was starting to feel a bit sick in my mouth, a bit delirious. I could feel myself not running straight anymore. Like I was starting to move across the road
Mhm.
involuntarily, so I could tell things were happening. All I can describe it at that point was it started to become a bit like an out of body experience, where I looked at my watch and I was still moving okay. This felt to me like I was running at like 7 minutes a kilometre,
Mhm.
and in reality I was running at 5:05. But you were belting along in a pair of flip flops faster than me to try and get the bottle back off me, which I was just going to ditch anyway. And it was honestly like an out of body experience. And like, is she really sprinting faster than me in a pair of flip flops, shouting and bawling at me? And I don't even know if I was taking the words in, but it was what I needed at that point was a kick up the
Mhm.
bum, and it worked. It
You got it.
focused me. It focused me for what was coming next, and I got the exact same thing from Pete Alexander from my club at a point, and it was encouragement, but it was strong encouragement. It was like get your finger out. I've run with you, and you need people like that around you that know your capability, know your limitations, and can safely push you to that next bit. So I was really grateful for it, but not at the time. I wanted you to trip up. I'm not going to lie.
I've got a question. Would you have stopped and helped me?
Absolutely not. I would have thrown the bottle at you on the way by.
I'm pretty sure that when you threw the ball back at me, you were aiming for my head.
Pretty much. I'm fairly sure I would have. I just couldn't take any more in. It would have helped me to take more of that, and
Mhm.
couldn't. Just couldn't anymore.
I do, I can relate to that and know exactly what you mean about the knowing you have to, but the feeling sick because there's only so much. And I think actually when it's a flavour for some weird reason, if it's Lucozade and SIS tablet, it's almost harder to
Yeah.
take for some reason. But I guess I didn't want to ruin that part of the story for you. But when you'd asked me at the start about spectating, that was actually a part I found quite difficult because watching somebody that you know really well, that you've ran with, that you know what their goals are, watching somebody run towards you and say,
Hmm.
basically, I feel dizzy, I'm not managing, that was quite difficult because I'm like, right, come on, you can. But then, like you say, it's how much do I tell you keep
Yeah.
going? Because are you really that dizzy that you might? And
Hmm.
it's hard to watch. And I think now I understand that from the spectator point of view that it's not just all standing clap, clap, clap when you're watching like friends and people like you really know quite well struggle. You're like, oh, okay, this isn't fun. This isn't the fun part.
Yeah.
And even people I didn't know, they're just like say starting to wobble
Yeah.
and step and sit down, and you're like, come on, and it's almost, I think, when you've been in that situation, things are like their goals and dreams are all kind of fading away at that point. So that was quite
Yeah.
difficult.
For every one person that ran past me on that last stretch from you guys to the finish. I must have run past 20 walking.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was just there was people walking along that bit where you were chatting away by the
Yeah.
and just had almost like I've run my race, it's not happening for whatever reason. So I was never at that point, but I was close to being out on my feet, and that was such a fine balance act of I was never going to not finish unless I was physically carted out. I was going to finish that race. But it was autopilot is how I would describe it. This is where the training I think came into its own, because what got me through in the end was resilience, stubbornness, and training. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't anything else. There was no luck about it. There was some good decision making, but that's because the miles were in the bank and you sort of retained that ability.
And do you think, and it's maybe a hard question to answer because if the conditions have been different, do you feel like you hit a wall?
Yeah, yeah, and
And do you,
I think it
mm-hmm,
happened coming out of the park, coming out of that country house bit,
mm-hmm,
and then so that if that was 4 miles down, it was then the probably the 2.5 miles back to you.
okay.
When you get back out onto the road, and actually all the other runners were coming the other way again, so I'm now the person that they're looking at thinking, God, he's going well. And Elaine, Marathon Mum, and Yunula, they're running by and they're shouting, and I clocked them, but I was not in a position to even, I think, acknowledge.
This
They probably saw a very different thing than I felt.
and this is so funny and it makes so much sense now because she said to me, something about were you really crying or were you hating it as much as you looked like you were when I passed you at mile 20? And I thought, but how did Elaine pass Ryan? But that makes sense
That
on the
way, coming
opposite
that way.
side.
Yeah, yeah, by that point I'd put music on. So I put music on in that gravelly part because it was so quiet, and I needed
Mhm,
something to distract me from my thoughts and try and just focus on one foot in front of the other for a bit. So I only clocked to shout relatively late, but
mhm.
I could barely focus.
Yeah. So that's you. You're coming in. You're in that final couple of K. I'm imagining, and I could hear it when we came to find you at the end. The screams and the cheers that's starting to pick up because you're nearing that finish line. So how did it feel in that final few K?
Don't know.
You don't know.
I really don't know. Looking at my splits, I have obviously stopped for like 10, 15 seconds a couple of times because you can see the wee dips,
Hmm.
but very short ones. And like, I don't even really remember that bit either. And I've picked up, so I'm guessing people were shouting at me because I know Newton were up the road there at that bit as well. Couple of things that have come back to me since was Jason catching me and then me catching him again. And I thought actually this would have been about 2 kilometres to go.
Right.
Um,
Okay.
and I thought we were going to just end up running this in together. And
Hmm.
that's good because we were not having a cozy chat, but there was see just that sense of somebody beside you that helps.
Hmm.
Then we passed Newton, and I think it was maybe Jenna McCallion had
Hmm.
shouted, cheering me on. And Jason's like, oh, they're shouting. And I had made a joke to him, not in a ha again. I was in such a dark place. I said, I'm a big fucking deal round here. Right. And see, at that point, he got carried away and started running faster. And I thought a sniper had taken him out. His hamstring went rock solid and he had to stop.
Oh
And
no.
he stopped. He'll tell you I left him behind and he'd be absolutely right. But I did look as if should I stop? And then I decided if I stop with you, I'm not going to go again. And I knew by that point I'd used up all the wriggle room for my time that I had.
Hmm.
I had to get home in less than 2 5:30s to get there.
Yeah. No, to be honest, I know everyone views things differently, but I'm very much like every man for themselves in a
Yeah.
marathon. You've got to do, and I'm sure he would say the same. Like he wouldn't have expected you
No,
to.
and only one of the Mitchell brothers can win. You know what?
Yeah,
So only one baldy ginger guy can cross the line first. It just wasn't his day. Try your best, Jess. You did. You tried.
there's always next one. So, I was going to ask about crossing the line and how it felt, but you can't remember. So that kind of ruins that part of the story.
No, but I was reading Mark Gallagher's blog on the finish line and saw some pictures of it, and it brought a flashback because I think I was actually geeing the crowd up in the last home straight as I was running through. But I could not have told you that until I read him talking about doing the same thing. I'm like, oh, I think I've just remembered doing that. But I don't remember crossing the line, don't remember getting my medal. The first thing I know was being through. I didn't even know my time. I
Really,
really
yeah.
didn't. The first thing I remember was after the race was talking to Jerry Higgins from Cambus Lang, who I'd been at uni with, and he ran a sub 3. He ran
Wow.
super quick, 250 or something. He was so quick, so he's so good. And I was wittering, and I couldn't stop wittering on. I couldn't stop my mouth. I was like Emily from the last episode. You just your mouth's going, and he actually, I sat down and he made me eat the bar that they give you
Mhm.
because I was delirious. That's what had happened at that point. I was all over the place. I sat down. I'm saying I sat down. I think I fell down. He made me eat. He watched me drinking. He chatted with me. He probably was doing it out of making sure I was okay. I thought he was just being sociable. And then it took me about 10 minutes to get my wits about me, enough to stand up again.
Mhm.
Then I made my way to the flag where I'd arranged to meet you, except I'd gone to the wrong flag anyway, because I'd gone to the charities flag, didn't realise there was 2 sets of them. And I met John Runs from Instagram. So he came over, so chipper, chatting away. I'm like, why are you happy? I don't understand why you're so bouncy. You look so fresh. And we had a good chat, and he listens to the podcast, and we decided to get a picture. And I think I said to him, you need to take it in your phone. I don't have mine. And he said, you're holding your phone? It was in my hand. And I'm saying I don't have a phone. And he said, let me grab my medal. And I said, oh, I've not got my medal. And he looked at it and I was like, you're wearing your medal? Somebody put it in my neck and I don't even remember. So see that last bit? I couldn't tell you.
Mhm.
The only thing I've got to say is I saw it afterwards for the people coming in behind me, and it was loud. It was super supportive, but none of it helped me, inspired me. The only thing I remember is talking to Jace and saying, I think we'd less than 200 metres to go, Alison. I'm saying to him, where the fuck is the finish? You still can't see it. Like it's
Mhm.
kind of tucked round the corner.
Yeah, it was a quite a tight little turn, wasn't it? You wouldn't
Yeah. So
be
I'm looking at my
expecting it.
watch and I'm like, so my watch measured not far away from being bang on, but I'm like going, I should be able to see this. I should be in the home straight. I'm thinking 200 metres, I should be running a straight line to a finish. Then you get round the corner and see it. And obviously I've just gone for it. And the time was 3:29:19,
Okay.
or 3:29:29. No, 3:29:19.
Mhm.
So I got in quite comfortably relatively to the 3:30 goal, but I lost a lot of time in that
Yeah.
last 10k. And with better management, maybe a bit more resilience and know-how, I could have probably taken another 2 or 3 minutes, I think.
But I mean, it's an absolutely amazing time. It really is. And like you say, it was under the goal, the B goal. Um, and yeah, hindsight's a great thing. You could maybe have not stopped so much. You could maybe done this or that, but you could have also kept pushing and ended up not finishing. And I think you made all the right decisions. I mean, unfortunately, you couldn't remember the finish, but I can tell you from all the marathons I've done, I don't really think that I've ever heard a finish like that. It's very hard in marathons for crowds to be on the finish line, but I thought it was really good at Edinburgh where people were right there, weren't
Yeah,
they?
it
Like,
was slapping the barriers and
mhm.
cheering, and there was music, and it was so loud.
I just remembered some.
What?
Remember when we were we're kind of jumping a bit when we met you, but when we were coming out, remember you were like, how do people still have energy to play games? I was like, what are you talking about? And you were like, there. And I was like, that's the finish, that's running.
I thought that was like some kind of like family area and people were playing games and like it was so noisy. I probably wasn't completely with the
No,
Woolwich at that point either. And I'm saying to you, how's then to get the energy to take part in that? And you're like, that's the finish. I was like, oh fuck, I don't even recognise it. That's why. That's
uh,
genuinely why. I had no recollection of running through there at that point.
no. So yeah, we found you on the grass. Unfortunately, it took a little while to get there.
Oh, I
And
was
then
delighted it took you so long because I needed just a wee bit of alone time.
yeah, you could tell you'd been had a little bit of time out, which, like you say, is probably needed just to reflect and take everything in because it was a nice little atmosphere, wasn't it? There was stalls and loads of
That was
people,
lovely.
families. It was
Yeah.
nice, and then you got to meet some of your fans, which was also nice.
Very good. So a few people spoke to me already in the charities bit that had either recognised me or was with somebody who listens or to the podcast. So I met quite a few people and I was chatting away. I had no idea how much time had passed between me finishing and you guys showing up, because I had to go to the bag drop, which couldn't have been further away, by the way, from where I was sitting. So I had to walk there and I was nearly crying. I remember saying to somebody, just in my tired state, I was like, why are you enjoying yourself? And the guy just looked at me. They said, why are you smiling? Why is anybody enjoying themselves through there? I was still lying at the charities bit. It turns out he'd only run it turns out he'd run the relay, just one leg off. So he was loving his life.
Yeah.
And I was in pieces. I'm like, stop smiling. Stop being so cheery. Stop being so happy.
Stop enjoying this.
So anybody that did speak to me, I apologise. I wasn't my usual charming, witty self.
Really.
No. But by the time you guys came, I don't know even how much time passed. I just sat there staring at the world, eating.
You were actually, like, everyone else was like interacting and you were genuinely like in your own little world, and I was like, well, okay.
I was happy in there, actually. I was happy for the headspace for 25 minutes, 30 minutes.
I feel we could have probably left you a bit longer, to be honest.
just to process what had just happened, and it was good. It let me just settle my thoughts.
So we then make you walk a K back to the car. Give you a little bit of time while we go and get some food, and then drop you off at home. So what happened next? I mean, one of the questions that everyone wants to know is, what did you eat and drink?
Yeah. So we actually met a guy that I played football with for 10 years on the way home, and he did the whole classic, I didn't train for it, and he didn't train for it, and I think he ran, I can't remember what he said, was it 5 hours or something? So, and he looked broken by the time I saw him, so I felt better about my life instantly after I saw him, because I couldn't. That just shows you, to anybody out there thinking about the time of those marathons, that guy worked just as hard or more so than I did for 5.5 hours. You know, the achievement, he was wearing the same medal, he had the same sense of achievement at the end. The time is a piece of the day, but it's not the day, it's not the whole day. If you hit your goal, bravo, well done, but it's not the be all and end all. When I got home, I wasn't hungry. Don't know, couldn't eat, wasn't ready to eat. I was drinking, I was nibbling away at stuff. But then come about, I don't even know what time we got home, Alison, but see, about 7 o'clock, I think.
It was
7 o'clock, 8 o'clock. Then I decided, I thought it was going to be a burger that I wanted, but it wasn't. It was Chinese I had. I had chicken balls, chips, fried rice, curry sauce, prawn crackers. I had a big plate of beige food that was piled like this high. So to any vegetarians out there, it's time to be sick in your mouth. But I was like a caged animal by the time I arrived eating it. And I had Coke with it.
Because I think that's it, isn't it? You do, like you say, you're kind of like nibbling on things, because it's a funny feeling that your body's almost got to catch up with what happened. So you hear a lot of people say, oh, I'm just not hungry, but you know you have to eat something.
I felt sick. I felt sick from the gels. I'd taken extra gels but on the nutrition of the run, so I'd taken 2 more gels than I planned, along with all that water more than I planned. So my stomach was felt bloated, even though I was dehydrated to hell. So it took me an hour of lying about to go, right, I'm ready to eat. But when it came, honestly, it was like something off the Discovery Channel watching me finish my dinner.
Well, I'm glad you've answered that question, because everyone wants to know. So you go to bed. Did you manage to sleep? Because I know sometimes the legs are still twitching, and obviously you're bloated, tired, but not tired.
I was out like a baby about 9:30 until 2 a.m. Then I pulled cramp in both legs at the same time, and it was horrific. I was bolt upright in the bed, but when I tried to pull my toes back to stretch off the cramp, I got cramp in my quad. So I had cramp in my quad and my hamstring at the same time. So every time I did something to make the other bit better, it made the other one worse. So that was me. I was like a broken man after 10 minutes trying to deal with that. And I've had a really broken sleep the rest of the night. I just was still coming down off the high of it, the challenge of it. My head was still whirring. It wasn't a great sleep. I was shattered the next day.
Yeah. And then you go to the next day and possibly the day after. And how was it for you? Because we obviously saw Instagram and people that you say you're on that high and then it's all over and you've got all the emotions.
Just going to be brutally honest with this, because I think that's why people listen, is not in hope that you'll be authentic. I had 270 messages plus on the day finished, and 268 of them were just well done. So positive, like
Mm.
building you up, building you up. The first one I opened, and I can't remember who it was from, and you might be listening, and it might have been you, and I know this is not how it was intended, but the first one said something along the lines of, and I'm paraphrasing, "Oh, that's a shame you didn't get your goal." So that was the first message I think that I'd
Oh.
seen. But that's not all it said. It said, "Oh, sorry, you didn't get your goal, but that's still a great time," type thing. And even at that point, though, I could feel my heckles right away. Like, what? Like, just, and I know it wouldn't have been, I know where that,
Don't say that to
but
anyone.
I know where the intention of that message comes from. It comes from somebody saying,
Hmm.
"You have had a brilliant day, don't get your head down."
Hmm.
Where my head was already, though, was from the minute I crossed the line, there was no regret whatsoever. I wasn't, "Oh, I wish," because I know that no matter what I did that day, I, no matter
Hmm.
what I did on that day, I was not going to get that A goal. And it was always, to me, an A goal should always be a big scary one. Like, what's the best you can do?
Hmm.
That's your A goal. What's the best you can do if it all goes right in the day?
Yeah, you don't train for 16 weeks to not really have
No.
a very like high A goal.
And you were worried I was going to do that. And I was for a while until I saw the progress I was making. But so that was the first
Hmm.
message I opened. And it stuck with me. I'm like, why would you think?
Hmm.
And I think there's a lesson in that for spectators, for friends, for people that are dealing, because so many people finished that run disappointed that I spoke to
Hmm.
because everybody had the
It's
same
been good.
experience. Yeah. So see, when you're dealing with somebody that's just coming off that disappointment, sometimes you don't need to find the words to console or anything else. You just need to be listening or whatever, or say, "Well done on giving it your sort of best." And it's not to mollycoddle, but I was buzzing off my time. So to see
Hmm.
somebody saying, "Sorry, you didn't get your goal," I'm like, I've just run a sub 3:30 on my first marathon. I'm not sorry. I'm delighted.
It's funny you say that. I'm always very conscious on how I congratulate people because I've had exactly what you just had. And it is, you're absolutely buzzing, and then someone will say, "Oh, but you're all right. Oh, well, what was next time?" And
Yeah.
I'm like, "Wait, whoa, 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 hold on here, because I am like I'm on cloud nine, and
Yeah.
it is so." And I know there was other people that really struggled, like you said, had to adjust their goals, maybe didn't quite go as planned. Some people it was their first one. Um, but I thought Nikki put it really well. I can't remember if it was on a story or a post, but as she said, everyone got the same medal, everyone ran the same race, might have all been in different times, but you ran a marathon. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
So
And that's, I think,
that's
yeah.
Nikki Mara Runs. She's changed her name now in
Mhm.
case it was Nikki
Yeah.
Grad Runs. She's now Nikki Mara Runs. We noticed Nikki. Um, so she won't mind me speaking about that either. Nikki was gutted with what happened on the day because I saw the mileage and so did you that she put
Yeah.
in. She worked her socks off, and
Oh, absolutely.
on the day for her, she knows now nutrition was where that race was won and lost for her on the day. But see, when the dust settles, she's got a marathon medal. It took her 24 hours. Now, your job is not to mollycoddle people either. See, if we're putting ourselves out there on social media with a picture of your medal, people are going to comment. So you need to be understanding of that. I was not angry at getting the message whatsoever. It was just because it was the first one I opened. I was
Yeah.
like, well, what? But I had so much support. And to circle back to the point, I was so overwhelmed by that support, 270 odd messages. I think I did manage to get back to practically everything over that time. I couldn't feel more lucky. That's what this community's done for me. That's the reason, partly why my goal was so big, scary, and ambitious. I had the confidence and the psychological safety that all these people have got my back. They're not looking for me to fail. I wasn't worried about not getting my target. I was delighted to share with them that I got my B target because that was what I got in the day. So I want to just say thank you to literally everybody. I think over the course of the week, I must have honestly had about 500, 600, 700 different messages, people wishing you luck, commenting, asking you questions. That engagement has just been super for the podcast. It's unbelievable the amount of people that spoke to me about it. I'm so grateful for everything you've done to support me, and thank you. And I'll hopefully will be able to reciprocate that on your races.
Brilliant. You've just stolen another question.
Sorry, what was the question?
For anyone you'd like to thank.
Once you start getting into name territory on that, you're always conscious of missing people. So I would generalise it. I would start by saying Nicola first and foremost, because the time that goes into training for a marathon can't be underestimated. And see when you're running your first one, it is underestimated.
Hmm.
And it's not just the 3 hours you're out long running, it's the 2 hours after it you need your feet up. It's the early morning to eat before it, and you're a man down. You're a man down for half the day. So for that, for 16 weeks for Nicola, maybe she was happy to get rid of me, I don't know, but her support
I
was
didn't want to say what we spoke about in the car.
probably, it wouldn't shock me. Her support was incredible. To my running mates from the Newton Road Runners, that changed my experience of long distance running with them. It's actually changed my trajectory in running. Probably it's sped me up. It's made me energized. They've been everything that you could ever hope for from a running club. It's not a running club like all the rest of them. To me, it's a lot more social, and it's a lot more everybody's at each other's back. I think you felt a wee bit of that sort of second hand support. To you, to Kirsten, to my close sort of running friends as well, that just listen to the moans and the doubts and all of that. But I'm not going to get more specific than that, but to say to everybody who's been at any part of it, see meeting you up at meeting with you at park run, listening to this, and everything's played a part to getting me to the start of a marathon line. I don't think I would have got there. I don't think I would have ever pushed myself without all of the stars aligning. So if anybody's been involved in just being back and forth to talk to me about running, you've played a part. So I'm thankful to all of them.
And it is, I think it's so important, like you say, it's everybody. I feel like my running's changed a bit as well since, the podcast and going to the park runs and just like the community we've got, because it does, you feel like you're doing it for you, but you know that people have your back. And
Yeah.
it's interesting when you were saying that, like, you set your goals for you, but you know that no matter how it goes, everyone understands, like everyone's been
Yeah.
there. And I just like I'm so proud of you. I've told you that so many times. I'm not going to
Yeah.
say it again because you'll get a big head, but I just watching you and growing in confidence, and some of the other guys as well. Like I said the same to Nikki, she's not the same person that I met at the
Yeah.
beginning. You're not like joining running clubs, seeing your times improve at the short stuff, at the park runs. It's been an amazing journey to watch. And I just think, like, for your first one, sub 3:30, absolutely amazing.
Yeah. But it's the tip of the iceberg, sub 3:30. So I've got a sub 3:30 marathon. If you got that alone, your day has been special.
Mm-hmm.
But I've got a sub 3:30 and I've got a PB at every distance on the way up during the training block. And I've got the best fitness I've ever had in my life. And I've lost 2 stone and I feel happier and healthier. And I've got more friends in that running community. So see, it feels like the tip of the iceberg. And that's why, to open the first message, I think, to go back to that one, to even think there could be any negative to it, certainly not for me. And I know everybody finishes with a different feeling, but if you put the training in and open your world up, there will always be another marathon anyway. I'll beat 3:29 at some point if I choose to do more. I'll also do worse than that at some point if I choose to do enough more. I'll have a worse day than that. There will be higher, there will be lower, but none of that changes all the achievements.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the actual marathon journey. Kind of we've covered all of that. So I know we know because you saw the questions too. We're absolutely inundated with people wanting to know about lots of very
I
random
didn't
things.
read them all. I just sent you them.
Sent you them. So shall we move on to some questions?
This is the bit I'm fearful of. I'm hoping that you have used your judicious nature to make sure none of Jason's questions get in. Right, let's go.
So I think there's actually been a few things, as I thought there would, that we covered when we were just chatting there.
Yeah.
I did have Elaine's question about why you looked so gubbed at mile 20. That was more because I was confused, but you've cleared that one up now. You were passing each other the different ways. I guess one thing that I never asked, because I think I know the answer to, but it's probably something a lot of people, especially those that haven't ran a marathon, would want to know is, did you ever feel at any point like giving up?
Yeah. But I didn't feel at any point that it was ever going to happen.
Yeah.
But I bloody
And
felt. I felt like it loads. In the last 10K, I would have, if I thought I could have got away, all those dark thoughts come. If I could get out of this while saving face and nobody ever found out about it, I would shake your hand and do it. But that's because you're in a world of hurt at that point. If you're pushing, if that's your experience of the marathon and you're on your limit, yeah. So loads, but it was never
actually
and never got to the point where I thought I might not finish this run. And the only point where I thought I'm in danger here was when I felt myself straying across the road by accident, and I saw a marshal starting to walk towards me at a point. I had to shake myself to. I was starting to do the Johnny Brownlee thing where you're running and you're like, yeah, and that happened, and that was the only point where I thought, if somebody catches me at that, they're going to stop me from my own good here.
And you see it all the time, and that's one of the worries, isn't it? And again, why you have to change the goal.
Yeah,
if
of
you
course,
want to finish.
yeah.
Did you learn anything that nobody did tell you about before?
Probably. No, everybody told me about the toughness of it. Like, so that's not, it wasn't, but see until you've lived it.
Yeah.
That last 10K. So even if you're taking your training up to 22 miles in your long run, you've still got 4 miles that are not tapped into. And I heard a lot, the last 4 will take care of themselves. You'll get that in adrenaline. Fucking no chance.
Yeah.
You get that on resilience. You get that on hanging in. Maybe on another day with different weather, you would get that a bit easier than I had it. But that bit was as tough as any race I've ever done. The only thing I could compare it to would be the half Ironman. They've run up and down Ben Nevis at the end of a particularly hard half Ironman was horrific, and that was put me back there where, well, I could not finish here. Like, I knew I was going to, but I could not finish. So that would be the only thing I've probably learned that nobody told me, because I'd spoke to so many people about marathons that I'd had so much good advice.
It's so true what you say, because I do remember you saying to me at the end, and I don't know if you remember, but you're like, I get it now. Like, now I know how hard it is. And you cannot explain to somebody that hasn't done one how it actually feels, like the emotions, the feelings, physical, mental, can you? Now you know.
Every walk of life, Alison, like you do the job, whatever job you do. I'm a teacher. You'd say it to people all the time. Come in and take a class and see how you feel about, like, if they think teachers are this, that, the next thing. And see, until you've done it yourself, you just can't articulate sometimes, because it's a feeling, it's not a description, it's an internal. So that would be the takeaway.
No, you're totally spot on there. So these are 2 quite personal questions that a lot of people wanted to know. Did you cry?
No, that's Jason and his stupidity. He said he found me crying at the water station. Listen, I was so dehydrated that even if they'd been crying, I don't think I would have had tears. No, I didn't cry, not coming over the line or anything. I didn't have that kind of emotion. The toughness was the overriding emotion. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was more pride in the resilience. I was really pleased for how stubborn I am. I wasn't like emotional. I can't believe I've done it. I knew I was going to do it. I never thought I wasn't going to do it. So it wasn't like, oh my God, I've finished a marathon. It was, I finished a marathon. That's where I was.
And you know, that makes total sense. And the next one, which I hope I know the answer to, because you got in my car after. Did you shit yourself?
Nope. Bill's behaved themselves start to finish. I did have a bit of a sore belly, but that was afterwards, after the race. Everything went really smoothly with fueling in the morning. I stayed very relaxed at the start, chatting, as I said. So I never had that nervous bit of, I need to go to the toilet, I wasn't running back and forward. And on the course, no, I had to stop and pee. But that was it. My stomach felt very full at a point, and actually see the flip belt I'm loving running in a flip belt. That's been introduced that quite late in my training block. The more swollen my stomach was feeling from the water, the more I felt that was pressing on me. That's quite a new experience, so I felt like that was making me think about peeing more than anything else.
I know, because we did quickly speak about the flip belts after, didn't we? And I love them. I've used them for years, but
they're great back at
start pushing on the bladder a little bit. But well, I'm glad that was the answer.
Glad we cleared that up.
You'd have been walking home.
Didn't shit myself. I shat in your car, just in the footwell. Sorry about that. Have you not checked?
That's why I got it invalidated now.
Blamed it on Rufus.
Yeah, got a really interesting one here, and I was like, well, this is a good question. I've never heard this asked or answered from a running perspective. Who would be your dream dinner party guest from a running world?
Running world? Absolutely. I'd rather eat myself than sit and have dinner with runners. You're going to talk about running? From a running world, you need to take Usain Bolt. He's as cool as a cucumber. Some jerk chicken. Or did he not say he only eats McDonald's chicken nuggets? We
Probably.
could have a McDonald's
He's
chicken
like
nuggets.
a terrible advert for an athlete, isn't he?
Yeah, that's the thing about runners though, and running. Like generally, I wouldn't be sitting glued to athletics at any point. It's not something I find particularly great to watch the elite level. It's not. It feels a million miles away from what we do, or what I do. Certainly, maybe not a million from you. You start with them. You're friends with Kipchoge now,
Well,
but so no, I'd rather eat myself than eat with runners because they're boring. We're all boring.
yeah, we just don't think we are because
No,
we just talk about running all the
I would
time.
take you so that I could just listen. You could talk to whoever you wanted.
Yeah, okay, that's that sounds like a fair compromise. How did you feel having people you actually knew on the course rather than just random cheaters? Did you feel that made a difference?
That was amazing.
Hmm.
That's quite difficult to distinguish sometimes if they're in the busy, crowded bits. There's people just reading your name on your number and shouting, "Come on, Ryan!"
Hmm.
And you're like, I could tell from the accents, I'm like, "You're too posh to know me, so you can't know me. You're just reading my name." Um, but you can really tell when somebody knows it's you because it's a whole
Ah,
different. Exactly, screaming, going mental, like Elaine.
yeah.
But that support on the way around and even just encouraging word is brilliant. I missed, is it Candice? I
Hmm.
was running beside her for about 2 or 3 minutes and I thought it was her and I didn't know if it was her. And I bottled it to say hello and I was knackered. And afterwards, when I'd seen her pictures, like, that was definitely her. I should
That
have.
was her.
But see, seeing people on the way around, it's a good marker. I had Corey from my club just in front of me for a good bit, just behind me for a bit. He was a good marker. Seeing
Hmm.
knowing somebody to watch for, that was handy because I knew how what his pace is, and if I can see him, I'm okay. So it
Hmm.
was nice, and this support at the side was mad as well. But I knew so many people just through all of this. It's mad. It's so
It
good.
was nice, wasn't it? Like, I think because the half marathon, like you said, started at 8 o'clock and that allowed everyone to get that done. And then you had like your Newton teammates that all stood at one point, and then I know there were some other people, and it just sounded like at that kind of mile 10, I think they were. It was a really nice atmosphere as
Yeah,
well. And it was nice that they could be a part of your and everyone else's day as well.
although Pete had a bottle for me as well, and I was looking for the black and yellow, and I nearly ran past them. They were all in their bloody blue
Oh,
t-shirts because
yeah,
they'd run the
finishes.
half marathon. And I think they were half cut with their pints as well. So he was right at the end of the line of them before I'd even clocked who it
That he was
was.
there.
Thankfully, they saw me and they were shouting. So, but the mad support from them, such a big group of
Hmm.
them through. No, it's brilliant. It was because I got to see achievements of so many people and I knew what they were aiming for too. And everybody finished. Everybody I know finished. Nobody DNF'd except Bob. Bob DNF'd, but do you know what? He was getting into that knowing that that was a possibility. So I know that he's not kicking himself, beating himself up. But I managed to get a chat with him at the start as well. Even that was nice seeing him.
Yeah. No, I know I've spoken to him a wee bit as well. That was actually his question. Funny you should ask, mention him, because we were laughing. He said for somebody really that wasn't that social, he found the personal support a huge thing as well on the course.
He
And I was like, well,
he made me
he
laugh
could
so
have
much.
made it maybe.
He made me laugh so much before it when he said his wife had said to him, "See this running thing, like this big crowd of people. You're the most antisocial person I know. How come you've got all these running friends?" He says, "See, in real life, I don't even like people. I'm like, you're me. He's my spirit animal." And Nicola would say the same. So like
Well, yeah, he basically.
you know thousands of people on Instagram to do with running now, yet like you don't even like your own pals sometimes, and they don't like you. I'm like, well, that's just how it works.
He doesn't even just know people on Instagram. He runs about 5 running groups
I
as
know,
well, doesn't
I
he? So
know.
he's taken it to the extreme.
Yep.
So I know we're kind of we've kind of getting tight on time. So one question that a lot of people asked, and I'm interested in, is I know what's next in terms of what you've got on. You've got your ultra and you've got your Lockneck 24 relay. But I think a lot of people wanted to know what's next in terms of marathons. And I've said that nobody has to decide straight away. But where your head at just now in terms of what's next there?
Yeah, so what's next is the Devil of the Highlands. So I've got an ultra, which is 42 miles of the West Highland Way, from Tyndrum to Fort William, I think. So it's got about 6,500 feet of elevation. If anything, the marathon scared the bejesus out me about the ultra because how tough that distance
Hmm.
was, knowing what I've got to do additional. So what I really need to do, I'm resting, recovering. I'm running on feel right now, just taking it easy. But I've got a date in my head for starting my plan properly for that, and I need to demystify that by getting some long runs done on trails, slowing down, doing all the things that will make me see that as a manageable task. Because I was like this with the marathon at the beginning too. I've got the Loch Ness 24. It's a relay structure. I've no pressure on that event. That'll be great. It's good people I'm going with. Beyond that, no marathon plans at all. I am going to enter all the ballots for all the majors. And if one of them lands my way, that will be next.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't, I will reassess next year, but I don't feel a hurry. I don't feel drawn to signing up to go again yet. And I'm not even sure I would go again at spring for next year. I don't know. I'm not saying never, because my plan over the winter will be to really get the speed work done, and you and I are going to do a bit of tourism and park run and get about and just see some different running places. So no plans, not jumping in. Haven't got my eye on anything, but the majors would be a different beast. If I ever get the chance to run any of them, I will.
I think that's the most sensible way to be, because I know a couple of people already who signed up to their next one, because you get that high, don't you? But personally, I think your approach is the best, where you're not going to rush into something. You've already got loads of things on anyway, so you're not certainly not going to have the blues because you're, as you say, you're right into ultras and relays and park runs and things. So I'm sure you'll find something. I think that's important as well, isn't it? Finding what's right for you. So when you finished, you'd said, "Oh, I don't think hot one like warm ones are for me. I should probably find somewhere in a cool country." Now I know you were joking, but there are all those things to take into account. So
Yeah.
do you want to train in the winter again? Do you maybe want to train in the summer and do an autumn one, or end up in winter? Do you want to go to Antarctic? Who knows? But like,
I
there's
might
no
hit these
rush.
hills, Alison. I might hit these hills and trails and fall in love with that side of running. And you know,
I
so if I
prefer to eat a lot of cake, but
but exactly, so what's not to like? But if I start signing up for another, if I sign up for even an autumn marathon and put myself under that pressure, I'm going to limit the training I can do in that side. So it can't. I don't want running becoming pressure. It's a hobby.
Mhm.
It'll be the right thing will come at the right time. It always has before.
No, absolutely agree. And that's the thing, isn't it? Why do we all do this? It's meant to be fun.
Yeah.
Oh, well, there were so many questions, so I think we should thank everybody for your input. But I think we'll kind of bring it to a close there, because I have my own little list of quick fire questions.
Here we go.
Oh, come on, I couldn't not do this.
Is it math? Is it my own quickfire questions?
With a twist.
Okay, right. Let's go. Hit me.
Right, so it's a little marathon focused, okay?
Okay.
So couple we have to ask that you always ask. So, best running related book or podcast that got you through this training block?
So that got me through the training block wasn't like I only listened to Point 99 and What the Fartlek, and I enjoyed both of them, and I took them in a lot of long runs. But what gets me through it personally, my go-to is a podcast called the Throwback podcast, and it's two American guys who listen to old albums from when they were young, and it's quite Brit centric though, like Oasis albums, and they talk about their lives. They're very funny, and they listen to a full album and talk about the songs and what was going on in their life, and the humour's right up my street. So the Throwback podcast is always my go-to. There are so many back catalogue episodes. If you find an album you like and go for it, it's so fun.
You can put the link on and share that with
Well,
everybody.
check out the pro here.
Hey, I've been paying attention. Park run or marathon?
Parkrun.
What hurt more, being passed by me running in flip-flops at mile 22, or your nipples after?
Emotionally being passed by you in flip-flops.
If you could run any marathon in the world, which one would it be?
New York.
What one bit of advice would you give having now ran a marathon?
Take it seriously. It's not for joking about. I saw so many people littered at the side of the road. And there is no bigger test or no bigger proof of you get out what you put in. So if you cut and run short, it's fine to say you're listening to your body, but if you're not, you need to not listen to your head. You need to listen to your plan.
No, I 100%. Playlist song?
Bleed it out, Linkin Park.
And finally, I Presley and run.
Because I've only started scratching the surface of what you might be capable of.
Oh, good. Did you know I was going to ask that?
No, I didn't. And I was asked on the Point 99 podcast and I gave a different answer, and I would
Mhm.
probably give a different answer tomorrow and the next day because I don't always run for the same reasons. Sometimes I run because I'm fat. Sometimes I run because I'm lazy, feeling lazy. Sometimes I run because I'm buzzing. I don't know. It just depends. See, can I add something?
Yeah.
Mark Gallagher asked a question that and I just spoke about the plan, and I wanted to touch on this because I spoke to Pete Cooper
Yes. Uh-huh.
as well. So Mark had asked me, did I think my plan was right for me? And because he had run a previous plan that he didn't feel was right for him, he's written his own plan this time and got his sub 3. Congratulations, did amazing.
Absolutely amazing.
Answer for me to that one, because I've been asked about my plan so many times and about Cooper. So we have a code through the podcast. If you listen, press play is the code on Cooper to get you a month free. And I'm not affiliated and I'm not an ambassador or anything like it. It was just what we managed to get with Pete when we had him on the show. That plan for me was perfect. And it was perfect because it took out all the thinking of the planning. And I've said that before. I didn't need help with motivation. So I didn't want a coach. I didn't want a full time person to be accountable to it. I've got my running club, I've got my friends, I've got myself to be accountable to. It structured my sessions for me. Mark's in a different position where he's such an experienced runner now. And I know not a marathon runner, but he's been steeped in the world for a lot longer than I have, where he's got the ability to put together a good solid plan for himself. I don't have the knowledge. So that plan was the perfect one for me with a coach on standby via Cooper if I wanted it.
And I've
Um,
heard a lot of people speak highly of the coaching app as well.
yeah.
So
So
yeah,
if it's runner, if it's Cooper, but the answer to that for me is this was the perfect plan for this time round, and I would use it again in a heartbeat because I've got enough knowledgeable people around me to say you could be going faster than that. And I had this the whole way through, up your paces, up your, so I did it up my time and up my time. And the only thing I would have changed about it is I was making so much progress through that I kept upping my time a wee bit, my projected time. So I was spending less time at marathon pace in my runs because my marathon pace kept going up.
hi,
So some of my long running was at a slower marathon pace because at the time it was right for my target. But you can't change that's hindsight because progress leads to. So the next time around, it would be higher. So I hope that's a long-winded way of saying the plan worked perfectly for me, and those apps have a place for runners at a level, and I'm at that level.
I think it's a brilliant app as well, isn't it? 'Cause as you said, it's not just an app. You do have real life
Yeah,
coaches
and
available
a
for support.
former Olympian and
Mhm.
another elite runner. It's two high level coaches that are there to tailor and tinker, and you can ask and they'll adapt it if you so choose to take that up. I didn't need it. I had enough people around me that I trusted and was confident in.
But yeah, no, that was a good question. I did see markets coming with that
Yeah,
because it is important, I think. So a lot of people ask about plans, and I do think as well. What I always remembered you saying about the app, which I thought was brilliant, is that it's made to work for you, isn't it? So I remember you saying to me, I don't want to run on a Sunday, so I just put that's not the day I want to run.
yeah,
I want to run. And people's lives are different, aren't they? So some people may only be able to run 3 days a week, some
yeah,
might want to do six, and it allows you to do that. And I think that flexibility is good as well. And I know you
yeah,
found that really
yeah.
useful.
But I've just been asked so many times about it, and I've also been asked by people now considering should they go for it. The answer
Mhm.
is yes if you've got the capability to run a marathon and you've built up. I wouldn't say go for it from 5k. Like you build as a process to it. Get to 10, get to your half marathon, get comfortable and confident there. But you can do it. You can do it, but you need to commit to the just you need to get out and do it. It won't run itself. None of it runs itself. You need to put the work in. But
And,
there's only one way
and
to do it, and it's to sign up and take the plunge.
and I think that's probably a good way to end this because I think you've hit the nail on the head. You've mentioned it a few times. Marathons aren't something you can just turn up and do on the day.
No.
You have to fully commit. You've got to give it everything. And that does mean like sacrifices at home, not spending time with loved ones. We've always been quite open and honest about that runners do have to be quite selfish, especially during marathon training. But I think if it's any consolation, I think it's completely paid off for you. I mean, what you've achieved on your first marathon is absolutely amazing. And I think I probably speak for every single person that follows you on Instagram, has listened to your podcast, but we're all proud of you. And can't wait to see what you achieve next.
Thank you so much, and I appreciate you stepping into the breach. You've handled this like a consummate pro, like I knew you would. It's the relationship with you and the ease and comfort that we can speak about this is the way I wanted to handle it, and it's paid dividends. So much exciting stuff coming up, and it'll all come through in the wash in good time. But final word from me to finish off today is just again reiterate the thank you to everybody. Keep rallying around each other. Keep that community that we are developing all the time positive. Get yourself to the men's 10K for the meetup. It's going to be a brilliant day as well. If you're on the periphery and feel like you're on the outside looking in, because we are using names of people that are now part of that community, that this is not a clique in any way. People will come, go as and when their life allows it. Reach out, chat to us. You will find everybody will welcome you with open arms. So thanks again, Alison, for today, and thank you to everybody that's listened. Thank you to you, the listeners, for joining us for another episode of the Press Play and Run podcast. You can really help to support the podcast by subscribing or following on your podcast platform of choice and by leaving a review. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Press Play and Run Podcast and to add the Press Play and Run playlist on Spotify. We'll be back every 2 weeks with new episodes, and please be sure to keep an eye on our Instagram page to find out which guests will be joining us. Until then, keep getting the trainers on, press play and run.